Now the topic for today's video is going to be about if meta in Honkai Star Rail even matters anymore, and I'd like you to take this one seriously because I do have my own 2 cents, my own takes that I feel like are fact. However, I will be going against the echo chamber and many people are not going to be happy with what I'm about to say. That being said though, I was inspired to make this video when I saw a comment that gave a genuinely good explanation as to why Sunday is falling off from the meta. Do I agree with it? No. However, very good points, and some of it to an extent is true. I'll show the comment up on screen right now, but this got me thinking, this got the gears in my brain rolling. Why do people care so much about meta and endgame in Honkai Star Rail? There's a very good and honestly a very simple explanation as to why. It's 2 things. Number 1 is going to be power creep and HP inflation. The other thing is going to be the people who talk about it. Now, of course, there is power creep in Honkai Star Rail. There is HP inflation. Am I going to deny that? No, because it's factually correct and it is there. I feel like what's more problematic, however, isn't the power creep, but how people talk about it. It is crazy to me how there's people in this general gacha community who still believe that characters and units are getting power crept after 2 to 3 patches. This matter is absolutely not true, and it is a very uneducated statement to say in this day and age. There's so many different evaluations and calculations that go into how a character functions, not just individually, but relative to the other units who function similarly to them at that level when it comes to kit design as well. And this leads me on to if meta in Honkai Star Rail even matters, and the answer is going to be yes, to an extent. Now, can you go with only DPSs in this game and still max star? No. Can you go with only sustains and max star? No. That being said though, there is a middle ground that if you can find, which you absolutely have the power to do so, you will be able to have the most amount of enjoyment from Honkai Star Rail while still max starring the endgame. There is a spectrum of sorts, right? There's accounts that just cannot max star the endgame fundamentally regardless as to what units they have, and there's going to be accounts. Many people fall under the category I'm about to mention, but people who overinvest and overcompensate for power creep. I'd like you to look at your account roster real quick and let me know if you're going to say yes or no. If you have a premium team comp for every single DPS that you have pulled, or almost every DPS, then you are overinvesting. If you have Sunday on your account, did you actually pull Sunday because you like the unit, or did you just pull him because he's meta and everybody else was hyping him up? Did you do that with Casterus as well, with Cyrene, Phynon, Tribi? Many people fed into the Tribi E1 hype without even understanding what difference it makes on their accounts. They just got the E1 because other people said so, and that's what 80 pulls gone, maybe even 160 if you got unlucky. It is very expensive getting a character on your account, and if you decide to do so, it needs to be for a good reason, but many people are lacking a good proper reason. Many of these units who you are pulling, many of these Eidolons and these Lycones that you're getting, they just don't matter. So many people say that they miss 1.x, and when I ask people why they say that, I get so many different responses when it comes to simplicity, when it comes to the story being a lot more casual. But the main one that I get from why 1.x was better for a lot of people was because of team flexibility. It felt like anybody could be used in any scenario, and nowadays people are purposely locking themselves out of using characters that they genuinely enjoy. Like I said earlier, there is a middle ground and you absolutely have the power to do so. The trick is to just not overinvest. You don't have to get premium team comps for every single DPS that you pull. And I will gladly show you my account as a fellow free-to-play player. There are many units here who are well built and are level 80 because there's a lot of units here that I do in fact use. There are some characters who I just simply will not use, such as Japard, Sealy, Clara, but you may notice I don't exactly have mind-numbingly zero cycling kinda units, and that's because when I pull a unit, my top priority is going to be enjoyment factor and flexibility. These are all the different team comps that I can build with Saber, These are all the different team comps that I can build with Binon. These are all the different team comps that I can build with the Herda. And let me put into perspective how things can change drastically if you step away from this odd zero cycle mentality, this tier 0 all-in mentality. It's a little bit trickier to use older DPSs because HP inflation does affect them, but you can still try to use an Acheron. A well-built Acheron will still max start the endgame. Firefly has become viable again. Jinglu takes a lot of work, but once you get her up and running, she is an absolute powerhouse. A lot of work, I get that, but still, what I'm about to say here is completely independent of my own opinion because I'm going to say nothing but the truth. Honkai Star Rail does have power creep, it does have HP inflation, and you have to be very careful about what units you actually pull and when. You can't be all willy-nilly. If you save up for a full year, you're probably gonna have a hard time keeping up. However, there is leniency when it comes to who you can get. If you love Bronya as a support, you just don't need Sunday. If you love Sunday as a support, you don't need to replace him for RMC or the next 100% action advanced support. If you love your Sparkle, continue using your Sparkle. If you love Acheron, get Cypher for Acheron. And when you look at my account roster again, you will realize that there's a lot of different kind of goofy team comps that I could run. I never use the exact same set of characters every time the endgame refreshes. I always switch it up because I find that to be fun. There are going to be some cases where a unit has to work with another unit and that's non-negotiable, like Ceridra and Vinon, Sparkle and Archer. This is set in stone, but the game was always like this, even back in 1.x. And in general, this is how games go. You kind of need some units to work with others, but otherwise you can use basically any support, any sustain, to an extent any DPS. Honkai Star Rail is very manageable when it comes to what units that you can use, and if you literally only get the flexible units and the ones that are the most versatile, you have now literally recreated the 1.x era in prime power creep Honkai Star Rail. You don't need to run the exact same rotations every time. You literally don't even need to speed tune if you don't want to. That is how easy Honkai Star Rail is. If you're willing to accept a 7 or 8 cycle clear in MOC overall floor 12, then the game becomes so much more fun and you stop thinking about power creep this, power creep that, and the next unit that you pull is going to be one that you just enjoy and you have fun using. Maybe you just like their design. This is exactly how I play Honkai Star Rail. I never played this game for meta. I played it for meta for maybe 4 or 5 months, found it to be boring, and I just switched back to being semi-casual. I do keep up with the meta and I make meta content, but I don't apply these meta rules to my account simply because I don't find it to be fun. And as a result, I've been max starring the endgame every 2 weeks for the last, at the very least, a year. I got 9 stars in Anomaly Arbitration last patch, all while still staying free to play, and that's because if you just have fun, you will enjoy the game. When you stop thinking about how quote-unquote terrible Fu Xuan or Bailu is, you will realize that there's many situations where they are viable. I literally use Bailu in every single situation where I don't need a cleanse, which is more often than you probably even realize. It's not rocket science. It's not a game that power creeps your units after 2 to 3 patches. You're not forced to get a premium team comp for every unit, but it's not the easiest game either. I will say that. It is easy overall, but you still need to have some level of critical thinking. You need to be very careful about who you pull, but otherwise you have much more leniency and room for error than what you're giving the game credit for. This is like my 9th video going over something like this, but I had to make it very clear. The power creep is there, but it's very minimal. You're not gonna notice it in the span of 2 patches. That is absurd and it's just not true. You could hate, dislike all you want, but the fact of the matter is, who cares if Sunday is quote-unquote falling off from the meta? A unit that is not meta can still max start the endgame easily. And realistically, most of y'all don't even zero cycle MOC every single 6 weeks anyway, so why even care about stuff like that? Why replace your Bronya with Sunday when Bronya is still max starting the endgame? In my opinion, that's just pulls gone down the drain unless you just like Sunday. But that's about it. I officially got nothing else to say, so I'll see y'all. I'm out.